The words hit me harder than anything I had heard that year. We were sitting beneath the warm yellow lights of a small diner in Asheville, North Carolina, with rain sliding down the windows and half-finished coffee growing cold between us. Hannah stared down at her hands and whispered, "No one wants to date me." Before I could answer, she suddenly lifted the edge of her shirt, not provocatively, but with the trembling desperation of someone finally ready to reveal the part of herself she had spent years hiding. Beneath it were several long, faded scars across her side and stomach. She quickly lowered the fabric again, her eyes filling with tears. "This is why," she said. "People see me, then they see this, and they leave." I looked at her for a long moment, realizing that the scars weren't the saddest thing in front of me. The saddest thing was that she had begun believing they made her unworthy of love. If you believe kindness can give someone a second chance, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes one simple act of compassion can remind a person that they are still worth choosing. My name is Caleb, and I had met Hannah 3 weeks earlier at a community bookstore where I volunteered on Saturday mornings. She was 29, quiet but funny, with a habit of pushing her hair behind her ear whenever she became nervous. The first time I saw her, she was standing in the history section holding a book she clearly wasn't reading. I noticed the way she avoided looking at other customers, almost as if she expected someone to judge her. When I offered to help her find another book, she smiled and said she was perfectly capable, then immediately apologized for sounding rude. I laughed and told her I hadn't taken it that way. Somehow, that small exchange became the beginning of a friendship neither of us expected. Over the next few weeks, Hannah and I started getting coffee after my volunteer shift. She told me about growing up in Ohio, moving to North Carolina after college, and working as an elementary school art teacher. She loved painting, old movies, and walking through places where she could hear birds instead of traffic. But whenever our conversations became personal, she changed the subject. I never pushed her. I knew everyone carried something they weren't ready to explain. Then one rainy evening, she finally told me. When Hannah was 22, she had been driving home from work during a terrible storm. Another driver lost control on a wet highway and crossed into her lane. Hannah survived the crash, but she spent weeks in the hospital and months learning to walk normally again. The accident left permanent scars along her side. Physically, she had recovered years ago. Emotionally, however, the accident had followed her everywhere. She told me about the dates that ended after she mentioned her scars. One man had told her he wanted someone who looked more natural. Another had asked if she was uncomfortable wearing certain clothes. Someone she had dated for almost 2 months had disappeared after seeing her scars for the first time. Each experience chipped away at her confidence until she stopped believing anyone could genuinely want her. I wanted to tell her she was beautiful, but I knew that wasn't enough. She didn't need another person to compliment her appearance. She needed someone to understand that her worth had never depended on having an unmarked body. That night at the diner, after she showed me the scars, she stared at the rain outside. I could see the embarrassment spreading across her face. She apologized for showing me, but I told her she had nothing to apologize for. Then I said the only thing that felt honest, "I'm staying." She looked at me as if she hadn't understood. I repeated it. "I'm staying, Hannah. Not because I feel sorry for you. Not because I think you're broken. I'm staying because I like the woman sitting across from me." For the first time that evening, she looked directly into my eyes. But loving someone, or even deciding you want to try, doesn't magically erase their fears. Over the next few months, Hannah tested me without realizing it. Sometimes she canceled plans at the last minute because she convinced herself I would eventually leave. Sometimes she refused to wear clothes she liked because they revealed her scars. Once, at a summer festival, she became overwhelmed when she noticed people looking in her direction and quietly walked away. I found her sitting behind a closed food stand, fighting tears. She told me I deserved someone easier. I told her I didn't want easier. I wanted real. Slowly, things changed. Hannah began painting again. She entered a local art exhibition and displayed a series of paintings about survival, using broken lines and bright colors to represent the difference between what happens to us and who we become afterward. I attended the exhibition and watched strangers stop in front of her paintings, moved by something she had created from pain. One painting showed a woman standing in front of a mirror. The woman had scars, but the reflection had something different, not perfection, but confidence. Hannah later told me it was the first painting she had ever made without trying to hide herself. A year after that rainy evening in the diner, we returned to the same table. The weather was clear this time, and sunlight poured through the windows. Hannah wore a sleeveless blue dress she once would have been too afraid to wear. The scars were still there. Nothing had magically erased them. But she no longer covered them with shame. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Do you remember what I said that night?" I smiled. "You said no one wanted to date you." She laughed softly. I was wrong. I looked at her and said, "You were never unwanted. You were just waiting for someone who could see the whole story." Hannah leaned against my shoulder, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Outside, people hurried along the sidewalk, cars passed through the intersection, and life continued exactly as it always had. But for us, something had changed. She had stopped measuring her worth by the people who walked away. And I had learned something too: sometimes love doesn't arrive by fixing someone's wounds. Sometimes it arrives by sitting beside them and proving, day after day, that their wounds don't scare you away. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that they are worthy of love, and subscribe for more emotional stories. Before we end, I want you to leave one special comment: "I'm staying." Write it for anyone who has ever felt unwanted because of something they couldn't change. Hannah's scars never disappeared. But eventually, she stopped seeing them as proof of what was wrong with her and started seeing them as proof of what she had survived. And sometimes, that's what a second chance really looks like: not becoming someone new, but finally learning to love the person you already are.